what does not kill you makes you stronger. Ask most people what their number one fear is. What do you think it is? Most people's number one fear is public humiliation. Okay. I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm not afraid of it. Because I've had plenty. And now, it's just time for me to say, I'm tough. Because what does not kill you makes you stronger.
Screaming that they hate America and we're the reason. If you don't feel safe, then stop defunding the policemen. You calling us extremists cause our words have hurt your feelings. Then we're sorry we can't hear you over the sound of our freedom. Y'all been filling up our classrooms with drag queens for kids. We think it's not appropriate, you tell us that it is. The complexities of gender and children won't ever mix when there's school shootings by women whose pronouns are him, his. I'm not Republican, but keep it 100, they making sense. The most destructive ideologies are coming from the left. I think Black Lives Matter, they think white lives matter less. And LGBTQ turned into WTF. Dear Democrats, I don't have nothing against the liberal, but the people representing you are communists and criminals. They've been starting World War III, we shipping missiles still. They don't want America great, they want it miserable. You can try to burn down the city, scream at the top of your lungs till you're dizzy. You can cancel everything and everybody in it, but it's not your America. You can burn the flag, get aggressive. You can wear a mask and pretend you're progressive. I got my First Amendment, don't forget I got the second. It's not your America. You can burn the flag, get aggressive. You can wear a mask and pretend you're progressive. I got my First Amendment, don't forget I got the second. It's not your America. I'm hearing words I never heard in life. Kids go to school to learn, never make it back home, they get murdered like. Who's concerned, not the left or the right? Hope you're ready for the fight, coming to your front door tonight. The former president got arrested, the current one lost, but I guess he got elected. Kids get molested, pedophiles all get protected, and you can kill a baby anytime if you're pregnant. People so weak, feel free to take a knee, and you can't even speak, God forbid you disagree. I don't even know what virtual signaling means. Young men used to fight wars, now they make memes. Divide us up, I'm pretty sure that's the plan. Got a gun in my hand for when shit hits the fan. And how the woman of the year is a man, I'm pretty sure I never really understand. You can try to burn down the city, scream at the top of your lungs till you're dizzy. You can cancel everything and everybody in it, but it's not your America. Of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. I ain't never gonna pretend that I give a damn. Anybody who's offended, come get it, we throwing hands. Anybody not trying to make America great again, you a pawn, you a clown, better know where I stand. I'm a white boy with the middle fingers in the air, dog. We don't give a what. 100 white boys gonna hold me down anywhere, dog. We think that you suck. My patriots the craziest, they ain't afraid of breaking fists on faces. If you really wanna taste of this, no safety tip, the same the stick and spray the clip. I pray you miss, cause if you don't, they gon' go wacko. Automatic gun smoke like tobacco. Never hit a lady, but it's pretty hard to tell if you're a girl or a they, them, there's these, that, those. I ain't never gonna take a knee for the anthem, smack them. I don't give a damn, can't stand them. Gang full of randoms, fan with a handgun. Run up in your mansion, leave it all abandoned. I was raised to be brave, to the grave, United States. We love the country that they've been corrupting. Go woke and go broker if you ain't awake. My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flag.
Able to go on a cruise again. I probably would have never been able to see my family at an event again. So my life changed when I don't regret the work I did. That's not what I'm saying. I want to get back to the mindset that I had where I'm happy and enjoying what I do versus like miserable every time I make a video. So that's on me. But with the lockdown, this is when everything changed politically too. And like, I just started getting away from a lot of other like right-wing influencers. And let me just take a sip of my coffee. Here's another thing. I never even enjoy my coffee. It goes cold every time, but that's what I do. It's not a hard job. I want to enjoy it today. I actually want to like enjoy myself. I'm having a good day. But when the lockdown happened, if people remember, I guess it was March, April, May, a lot of people went from being like, oh, I'm going to say this and I'm going to really dive into the numbers. And they kind of just turned into like Trump megaphones, I would say, right? So when I thought it was right to give Trump a megaphone, I'd give Trump a megaphone. When I thought it was right to defend Trump, I'd defend Trump. When Trump passed a spending bill I disagreed with in 2019. I disagreed with it. That was always my thing. I just liked Trump because I felt like he was a really good leader. And it's like, what's there not to like? I'm not going to be a crazy hard critic of Trump. I'm not one of these purist type people that everybody keeps accusing me of being. I just felt like Trump was just executing on most things. And when he messed up, I'm like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But when you mess up during the pandemic, it is that big of a deal. And it's not a small deal. So I'm going to report on it, and I'm going to hold his feet to the fire, metaphorically, obviously. So as March, April, May, June, a lot of people that I thought were smart, they started dropping like flies on the intellectual dark web, as they call themselves. Like Scott Adams turned into a nimwit for 2 years, and now he's back. But, we lost him for 2 years. Sam Harris, I don't know if he ever recovered his mind from his like Trump derangement syndrome. That guy's gone. Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't know genders anymore. But then on the right, you had a lot of people that I thought would be there standing with me against this tyranny. And instead of actually doing the reporting that everyone needed, they just put a megaphone to Donald Trump. So that started giving me a rift in this world that I live in, because people like James Woods and Jack Posobiec, I like both of them, but they're basically just saying Sweden is so deadly because they didn't lock down because Trump said that. So I realized, well, they're not doing the reporting I'm doing. They're just giving a megaphone to Trump, who for some reason is siding with the communists. For some reason, he's saying Sweden should have locked down like America. He's for some reason telling Georgia they should have stayed locked down. And then Trump became part of the establishment. Whether you think he made a mistake or he did it purposely or it's controlled opposition or he's your best friend, he's your uncle at a barbecue, just always trying to stand up for you, whatever you want to say about it, that started happening. And my job, and I'm starting to realize that a lot of people don't want this. They want someone to just like a pharmacy CEO like Vivek Ramaswamy to just say everything they want to hear, even if he doesn't believe it. And maybe that's why the elites always win. And maybe that's why they get away with this stuff, is because people act like sheep. Maybe that's, every philosopher at a certain point has come to the conclusion that people don't want to wake up. They lay the blueprint for them and people just trip over their own poop. And it's like, it's sad. It's embarrassing, but like, maybe that's the future. Like maybe that's why certain people just run you in circles, because you want to run in circles. I don't know. I was thinking like, maybe I should call this stuff out, but people are like, no. If Trump says Sweden locked down, they should have locked down. And it's like, no, that's communist propaganda. I said it in March, April, May, June. I'm like, Trump's basically becoming a communist at this point by saying that another country should have locked down as part of America. We lost our guy. For whatever reason, we lost our guy, right? So this is the beginning of the end of my fun in MAGA world, because one, I don't have the same Zen attitude that I had, because I can't even exist in reality without people telling me I can't access things that I used to access. Like now I'm a slave of the state. Now I'm a prisoner. Now after the vaccine came out a year later, I'm a third tier citizen. Everybody's looking at me like, well, I'll go to the sports game, but maybe you'll get to go. Like I felt like the whole world turned on me, right? So then coming into, I just want to say some of my disagreements with people from April, May, June, July, August, September, October. I felt like everybody was doing piss poor reporting. I felt like the elites had won. I felt like they had created this, spectacle where people would fight each other, but people stopped critically thinking on both sides. And I felt more alone than I've ever felt, because now all my peers and all the people that I thought would be there making total logical sense about freedom and liberty were basically just running circles around Trump, and that's all they really had the capability of doing. If he said it, they said it. If he said it, they said it. It's like they're not really thinking anymore. So if Trump said something dope, they said something dope. If Trump said something whack, they said something whack. People turned into like parrots and robots, and I was like, dang, this is weird, because the guy who was awesome for 3 years is now basically running around being a socialist and a pseudo-communist, kind of flip-flopping on things. He'll say this, he'll say this, he'll say open, then he'll say close the country again. He'll say it's them doing it, he'll say it's him doing it. I'm like, it's getting weird, and I'm like, wow, what a good trap. And then at the same time, you have the people that are like really in deep, where they're like, An0maly, shut up. Trump's going to save the planet from his lockdowns. His lockdowns are a secret strategy to arrest Chrissy Teigen in the Vatican. And these people were harassing me, threatening me. Like, it was insane. Like, it was Q-tards, as we call them sometimes, QAnon people, who I remember, and I'm not going to name names, but I remember the exact people who put out YouTube videos that got millions of views saying, oh, Trump's locking the country down to arrest the Vatican. They were part of the commie propaganda. They were, whether they meant to be or not, I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt today. They were controlled opposition, communist propaganda, brainwashing a bunch of conservatives and libertarians that Trump is our king that is locking down the world to arrest the pedophiles in a foreign country. Like, people were making videos like that were getting millions of views, and they've never apologized, and they've never admitted they were wrong. And I don't know what type of ego or narcissism that has to be to push such an outlandish lie that now is wrong, but being such a psychopath that you won't even admit that you ever said it when everyone knows you said it. Like, I lost those people, and they're like, shut the hell up, don't criticize the lockdowns. And then 3 months later, they're like, Fauci sucks, we never even said that. So that threw me off, like, psychologically. I'm like, that's freaking crazy. Trump flip-flopping on these policies, everybody like not having a brain of their own, because they were programmed for 3 years to just, this guy's right, this guy's right, this guy's right, this guy's right, crushing. So then when it all goes down, people are like conditioned to just feel the same way about the person who's clearly not who he was 2 years ago. And I felt like we were just being psychologically just abused. And here's the thing with the, before I move on, I want to see justice for what they did, not for myself, not because, some people are like, oh, that's all you want to talk about. Guys, that was the craziest. Let's not even get to the physical side of it and financial side of it. Psychologically, the way that they all abused us for 15 days and 30 days and 50 days and 80 days, and you need a vaccine to go to the store and you need a mask to go to the store. And the fact that the Democrats did it and the Republicans caved, the fact that the Democrats did it and the Republicans funded it, the fact that the Democrats did it for 2 years and the Republicans did it for 8 months. Republicans are controlled opposition, including Trump. People don't want to believe that, because it's like Comic-Con for adults. They just want to dress up and play with each other and pretend like they're so brave and they're so strong by living vicariously through a man that doesn't give a crap about them. And that's the movement now. And I don't agree with it, and I don't apologize. I only apologize in any way for my own behavior and my own mindset and my own spirit, because that's something that no one can affect. That's my responsibility. But for my opinions and my reporting, I'm not sorry, because it's right. It's the truth. And like, people lost their mind, but I know why they did, because we got psychologically abused. So now 3 years later, after all that psychological abuse, not even talking about what they did to the economy and jobs and the vaccine mandates, just the psychological aspect of it, you have Joe Biden, who's the front runner in the Democratic Party, who doesn't want to talk about this stuff because it doesn't look good on him, because he lied in 2020 about it to get elected. And then you have Donald Trump, who calls himself the father of the vaccine, who still never admits a single part of anything he did was wrong, unlike 99% of the party. And he's leading the Republican side. So it's two people who don't want to talk about this, the every aspect of the COVID thing, because they were both in on it, Trump and Biden. And who's now the secondary guy that's running up fake rapping Eminem songs? It's a pharmacy CEO who a year and a half ago was tweeting out George Soros op-eds, who 9 months ago said he thinks Trump's a sore loser with Stacey Abrams in his book he wrote in September of 2020. Now all of a sudden he's the biggest MAGA sycophant, a pharmacy CEO and a father of the vaccine versus Joe Biden, and nobody thinks something's wrong. And the thing is, I've had intuition on this topic before with January 6th that everyone treated me the same way. And I want to get into that. They said, you don't understand. But my intuition was telling me something isn't adding up, because I'm not a follower. I'm not a sheep. Yes, I'm a righteous man. Yes, I'm a brave man. I'm not afraid of doing stuff for what I think is right. But if I don't think it's right, you can't bully me into doing it. Liberals couldn't bully me into not liking Trump when I like Trump. Republicans can't bully me into thinking Sweden should have locked down, or I need to go to the Capitol and wear a mask on an airplane to go march in the street and take selfies. Like, nothing was adding up to me. So from November to January, I didn't go to January 6th. And I'm going to tell people why. And this is the same intuition I have about Trump and Vivek and all this other nonsense that nobody wants to talk about because they just want to play dress up and hang out. So when November happened and the election happened, I felt like everybody else. I didn't think it was fair. I thought it was insane. Trump was up like 80, 90%. They stopped the vote. There's a water leak. They're waiting 5 hours. You know what I'm saying? They're counting the votes when everybody's asleep. Like, it's insane. The election was insane. And the biggest part of the election, that was probably the worst aspect of it that allowed everything to happen, was the fact that every state got to do mass mail-in ballots and send them to every single person and change the entire structure of the mass mail-in ballot voting system. And if you look at that, that was signed off on the CARES Act. That was signed off by Republicans and Democrats. So you'll never hear this on most Republican media. But once again, the Republicans set you up during the election. They're not the victim. They're not like outside the system, and Democrats just did this behind their back. Democrats didn't have to do it behind their back because Republicans, including Trump, gave them all the money and the resources and the legality to do it when they signed these crazy bills. And some of the executive orders that he signed in 2019 and 2020 are equally insane when it comes to big pharma and the CDC and stuff. But nobody pays attention. Team red, team blue, blue guy, red guy, false paradigm, fake fight. Democrats do 20 times the crazy stuff. Republicans.
Good cop, bad cop, two wings of the same bird, as we've been saying.
In late November, word had already gotten off of the mainland that there was a virus in Wuhan. 6 weeks later, the trade truce was signed with an out clause, a very clever out clause, that said if there was any kind of act of God, pandemic, then they didn't have to make good on what they had committed to buy from the United States. Within days, they announced the first coronavirus. The World Health Organization should be held accountable for not holding China accountable to providing good, valid data so that the rest of the world could prepare for fewer people to die.
Most people, what their number one fear is, what do you think it is? Most people's number one fear is public humiliation. Okay. I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm not afraid of it. Because I've had plenty. And now, it's just time for me to say, I'm tough. Because what does not kill you makes you stronger.
Expanded the strength of man's muscles.
People, and so I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, and I had become fascinated with the idea of computers.
The Industrial Revolution expanded the strength of man's muscles in the reach of his hand. The Information Revolution is magnifying the power of his brain, changing forever the way Americans work, play, travel, and even think.
I was was always quite fascinated with the computer and Star Trek. The thing fucking talked. So I convinced this guy who worked for my dad, he was a pharmacist assistant, to bring me to the local university and show me a real fucking computer. So he brought me down to the university, sat me down, and of course I immediately sit there and I was like, hello, computer. Because the only knowledge I have of computer is Star Trek, and it's supposed to talk, right? And he's like, no, it doesn't work like that. And there was a program. It was a very basic chat program. As a friggin' 13-year-old kid, you're sitting there to shoot shit, kind of start talking back to you. You're like, fuck me. That's incredible, Then I went to my grandmother and I said, I need $100. There was no way to buy a computer back then. It was a kit that you bought, and then they sent it to you, and you had to literally solder the fucking thing together, and then plug it into a television and a cassette recorder, and the cassette recorder acted as the hard drive. And I said, Grandma, just sit down, please. I want to talk to you. I am convinced, Grandma, that these things called computers are going to change the world. And she's like, well, what does it do? I was like, you can use it as a calculator, you can balance your checkbook with it, you can play video games. She leaned back in the chair and she says, well, I'm going to spend $2 and buy you a pocket calculator, and then I'm going to sit you down and teach you how to balance your checkbook, and then if you do all that, I'll take you out to the video game store, and for $40 I'll buy you a Pong game, and you can just skip the $100 computer. I said, Grandma, you just don't understand. This is going to change the world. It took me about a year to put the thing together. So you can see that coming into it from that way, in that fashion, just the fascination's never going to wear off. Now, I'm like a kid in the candy store. I'm living my own science fiction. I wake up every morning, I get in front of that computer, I am not unhappy. I spend 10, 12 hours a day in front of that thing, and I just find it all fascinating every single fucking day I get up.
He gets to Cambridge. He was sleeping on park benches. My understanding of it was just because he liked the mobility of it. He claims that he was always homeless by choice.
And then I went to a Grateful Dead show. Inevitably, that was going to come into it. And it was in Boston. And I ran across an anti-apartheid protest. I stopped. I hung out with people. I smoked some pot. I was given flyers and shit. You make friends with people that got a flyer in their hand, you're going to read it. I was so angry that there could be a system of government in our century, in my lifetime, that you had to go into a police station and put your hand up to a color chart, and based on how dark or light you were, that's how many rights you got. That is fucking ridiculous. And then they're like, yeah, well, thanks for hanging out with us, and we're doing this thing fucking tomorrow. They got me really good with the whole hanging out with me and smoking some weed thing, because being a solitude kind of kid, anybody that made me feel like I was their pal, they got the time of day. And of course I had to do other things. I went to a lot of rock shows back then. I had to make a living, and I did that at rock shows. Not only am I not ashamed, but I'm somewhat proud of the fact that we sold really good LSD. We would go out and do a US tour with the dad, and we would raise shit tons of money, and it just gelled more is all it did. I went to more Dead shows. I made more money. I went to more protests. Some dude with fucking cakey ass dreads, literally down to his knees, would sidle up to me and give me maybe a little piece of paper folded up like this in a passing crowd. And it would be the next ELF action, or the next ALF action, or the next protest against anti-apartheid. That's definitely the whole texture of the cloth, and it just gets woven tighter and tighter as I become more and more sucked into this idea of just permanent resistance to all this fucked up shit. The things like the Animal Liberation Front, the Earth Liberation Front, I did my tours of duty in both of those. And then eventually our little silly little hacker group that we called the People's Liberation Front, the PLF, we were more of like a little militia. We adopted these titles called Commander, and we'd all dress in camo when we went to protest and shit. And one day, my friend sat me down and said, look, we want to have a talk about something. A hacktivist group by the name of Anonymous had hacked the forums of the Epilepsy Foundation of America. And they had placed on the forum, on the front page, a animated GIF. These animated GIFs, they strobed very brightly, they strobed very fast. They could take an epileptic and cause him to have a seizure just from looking at it. 4 people went to the hospital across the country. And these people were literally harmed by hackers thousands of miles away, physically wounded. It sounds so funny on one level. I get the lulls. I get why they did it. They're still fucking dickheads. If you're out there today watching this movie, you're a piece of shit.
He was a deadhead. Here's a guy who would anti-apartheid protesters. He got busted supposedly for selling 300 hits of acid at Dead shows. I mean, this is what he's coming out of. So this idea that these punks were trying to hurt people was upsetting. So he didn't have a great opinion of this Anonymous, whatever it was.
We can't let that fucking pass. These people need to either be brought to justice or at the very least fucking monitored to see what else they're gonna fucking do. So I was tasked with literally infiltrating Anonymous. I was to go in the IRCs, spend as much time as I could, make as much contacts, not to get these people busted. This was not some sort of law enforcement thing. I just want to know what these fucking people are up to, So that's how I get into Anonymous.
was no founder of Anonymous. From late 2007 on, there was some degree of soft power that, in one way or another, managed to corral this phenomenon, and did so in ways that were effective, that allowed it to become a decisive force, sometimes in the history of nations. There was no reason to expect that that would last. Without a charter, without a structure, there was no reason to expect this would go on for too long. It is frankly shocking in retrospect that it worked for as long as it did. My name is Barrett Brown. I'm a journalist, an activist, and a gentleman adventurer. Anonymous was not founded, and I'm not sure if anybody would have taken responsibility for it had they actually founded it back in the 4chan days. The 4chan website, the image board that have been around since 2004, 2005, the primordial soup from which Anonymous eventually evolved.
That was the crucible for Anonymous. So I don't think you can really understand Anonymous without understanding 4chan. There were message boards within 4chan. It was a forum for people on the internet to talk freely and openly about a variety of subjects. Then there was a board that was just the random board, /B, where you could talk about anything. That's where it became a bit more free form. And the idea was that your default handle was Anonymous. That was the name you were given. It was kind of like this hive mind of the internet. And so they started to do what they called raids, which was sort of like, hey, let's do like a little field trip on the internet, something fun and stupid. So they did, one of the famous ones was Have a Hotel, which was this children's game, which they decided to infiltrate, have all these characters with afros. I think there was some like Nazi imagery. It was just about shock value and fun. Obviously offensive fun.
I participated in some of these things, like some of this Second Life raids where they would don these bizarre, garish outfits and go around and wave giant penises like at concerts they're having in Second Life and bomb furry nightclubs. I remember thinking like the emergent organization that's going on here. This is a new dynamic that the internet has made possible. In a world where there's no more pioneer land, there's no more frontier, suddenly it was all frontier in every direction. I wondered, what would happen when these people realize what power they have and what greater power they could have if they were to adopt some shared ideology, some shared enemy even. And that ended up happening.
Everyone knows that Anonymous existed, depending on how you look at it, all the way back to even late 03. But in reality, that was two people on a website, The strangest thing happens, in January 08, it becomes this, giant movement that the news is covering. And that was partially my fault and definitely an accident. I look back and I wish I could say, I masterminded this amazing thing on purpose. No, I have no idea what I was doing, dude. On January 14th, 2008, up on 4chan, this video is posted of Tom Cruise being insane.
Tom Cruise, Scientologist. Being a Scientologist, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else. As you drive past, you have to do something about it because you're the only one that can really help.
And another post comes saying the video is gone. And everyone's like, well, wait, why did that get taken down? That's Tom Cruise being insane. It's fucking funny. We decided that we're really good at doxing people. We're really good at getting their information and hunting people down and use some connections to find the person who had the video. And by we, I mean a few of us who were on IRC, which is a chat system. We went and found the person who had uploaded that video and got their source, and we re-uploaded it. It was taken offline in like 30 seconds. Scientology at that point was watching YouTube for everything going by and like, got it again. And that actually pissed us off.
You just don't do that. You don't take something off the internet. I remember talking to someone about this, and they equated it to like a playground, and somebody took their ball.
We have fair use laws under the DMCA, but YouTube was still caving because they didn't want to fight $1 billion behemoth like Scientology.
The Church of Scientology had a long history, ever since the internet became a thing, of trying to control it, trying to censor materials from the church that they consider to be proprietary. Generally things that are embarrassing regarding their beliefs.
So we decided we were going to troll Scientology by putting out a press release.
Hello, leaders of Scientology. We are Anonymous. Over the years, we have been watching you, your campaigns of misinformation, your suppression of dissent, your litigious nature.
It skirted the line between goofy and awe-inspiring. It happens to successfully veer towards awe-inspiring.
Anonymous has therefore decided that your organization should be destroyed.
This is ominous. Like, we're writing like, the internet is coming for you, get ready.
We shall proceed to expel you from the internet and systematically dismantle the Church of Scientology in its present form.
Anonymous promised an army would come and defeat Scientology, would come and bring just unprecedented chaos.
It was about 10:20 at night on the 21st of January, 2008. I don't remember my birthday half the time. I don't know why this one sticks so well, but then we uploaded this video. And I think if I'm lucky, 20, 30 people watch this video, find it funny.
We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
I got woken up by my girlfriend at the time. It was like 4:30 in the morning. She's calling me, maybe 5, is right around there. And she says, turn on CNN. And I turned on CNN, and the video's on CNN. And I'm like, what is going on?
You have nowhere to hide, because we are everywhere.
And at that point, we're sitting there with 1 million views on the video, news reaching out trying to get a hold of us, Scientology paying big money to private eyes trying to find us, and an army kind of in front of us that are all going by the name Anonymous now.
They promised an army. They didn't have it. But by virtue of making it clear, making it palpable, people wanted this army that would emerge from the internet and right wrongs.
And so naively, we're like, well, then let's plan a global worldwide protest in every, major country on the planet. We're going to be those old school protest types, but do it like the internet does it, so make it fun. We're sending
Ray Magliozzi here. When you need parts, eBay Motors insures
us outside, so they better remain anonymous. So we're going to need to cover our faces. The media needs something they can show that's the ominous thing, right? So we had to give them a mask. It had to be available. So we actually spent the next about 25 hours calling comic shops, costume shops, and literally every single city we tried to call had Guy Fawkes masks in stock, sitting in back that no one was buying, that they had discounted because everyone thought after the V for Vendetta movie that 1 million of these would sell, and none did. And we're like, well, great, decision made. It's the only mask we can actually use. Everyone wants a romantic version of this story? No, it was because it was the only one that was available in every single town we were going to be in.
It was ominous. It sort of created this mythology of Anonymous. Who is Anonymous? What are they? They wear these masks, And I think that was the time when Anonymous was really branded.
And so having conceived of the army and presented the picture, the army came. They happened to be clever enough to organize all of these thousands of people who saw this video they made. And so the army was materialized. The army showed up.
This is what the internet would look like if it went outside. There were women, there were people of color, every race, there were young and old, there was everyone. And we just weren't expecting that. We were really expecting the young hackerish 4chaner guys to all show up and that to be our little group of 20 that stood on the corner for an hour. And instead, all these other people showed up, and it was great.
And that's how Anonymous first became a decisive force.
We have a thing now. What do we do with this? It had only been built for fighting Scientology. In reality, its whole goal was actually just to screw with them for a week. Again, just being so off the cuff and so completely accidental, every step of it. We didn't expect this to keep going.
The Scientology protest at that time was funny as hell. And that's what eventually sold me on them. They really were turned out to be people that were authentic. So I'm hanging out with these people, and like I said, the vast majority of them, I have to admit, were good people. At that point in the story, there's just one of those cathartic moments that's about to happen for really everybody. And that was the release of the Collateral Murder video. Of that was an immediate thunderstorm of persecution fired off at WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks picked a fight with the U.S. Now the U.S. is fighting back in more ways than one. American lawmakers want to see founder Julian Assange. They want to see him tried under the Espionage Act. And the WikiLeaks website has its own trouble. This is a new news here. PayPal has announced it has suspended WikiLeaks' account, costing it a vital source of funding.
MasterCard, Visa, and PayPal agreed to a behind-the-scenes U.S. embargo against WikiLeaks, whereby they all simultaneously, more or less, said, we're not going to process donations to WikiLeaks anymore.
Immediately, there is this fucking visceral rage because websites like the KKK or the Westboro Baptist Church have PayPal donation links on their fucking sites. But then, what? A publishing company like WikiLeaks just trying to get enough money to pay for their servers? And no? Are you kidding me? And so Anonymous just left that day. The day the donation portals came down. Anonymous said, we're coming for you.
Supporters of the website WikiLeaks launching a sweeping cyber war this week.
That's right. It's being called Operation Payback or also Operation Avenge Assange. And it's basically a loose affiliation of hackers that call themselves Anonymous. This time they're turning attention to what they consider to be the enemies of WikiLeaks. Visa, MasterCards are the big hits they've had so far.
This man calls himself Commander X and says he's part of Anonymous.
The power of Anonymous is that we have the ability to affect change on the internet.
Their method of choice, a denial of service attack, where hackers overwhelm websites with a huge volume of requests for information, crashing the site, says Commander X, for a cause.
That process is the equivalent of a virtual sit-in.
I can best sum up my philosophy with the quote that I'm so famous for and is, I admit, very fucking funny. You only need two things in this world to be a world-class hacker: a computer and a cool pair of sunglasses. And the computer's optional.
You have a site online? All of a sudden we snap our fingers and that site is gone.
Anybody can do it.
You don't have to be a hacker to take down a website. You know, you can download a program and figure it out in an afternoon.
These are all various DDoS weapons. This would be the equivalent of a rifle. And so now our target has been loaded, and as we say in Anonymous, poo poo poo. And hopefully hundreds, if maybe thousands of people would download this same software, and all of us fire. So it's really about multiplication. This is a weapon that's designed to be used by an army. And we just kept going. It was an incredible time because that entire 10 days you don't even sleep.
You have in essence Julian Assange, who has become a cyber messiah, and hundreds of followers who are waking up zombie computers, their soldiers, and attacking companies like Visa and MasterCard.
And this is the first time you really begin to hear during those 10 days the FBI rhetoric was just over the top. You know, these are cyber terrorists, we're going to shut them down. And of course, we're all like, yeah, fuck you. And so what? It's a protest, motherfuckers, get used to it. In the midst of that, I've been living in Santa Cruz, and I had a cabin up in the mountains, but I used to stay, and when I was in Santa Cruz, I didn't pay for a hotel. There's places to sleep outdoors. Santa Cruz doesn't just have homeless people. You have, like, you're mentally ill and you're addicted, hover around Santa Cruz because there's a lot of drugs there. It's a surf town. But the vast majority of people that they label homeless people are actually just bohemes. They're just people traveling up and down the coast. It's a travel corridor for backpacking, camper living culture that exists in California. You will not make it illegal for a man to fall asleep on the fucking grass and give him a ticket and even put him in fucking jail. And when that doesn't pass muster in court, you make a law against people covering up with a blanket at night when they're asleep. Literally, they got a blanket law in Santa Cruz. I'm not even shitting you. These homeless people had a protest camp going called Peace Camp. We were sleeping on the courthouse steps. We were sleeping in protest. We were sleeping literally with a sign next to us that said, I am protesting the sleep law. That's why I'm sleeping here. There's people sleeping all over this fucking courthouse. What's going on here? It's Peace Camp 2010.
So the camp has grown from an overnight sleep-in to a 24-hour hangout.
We're stars, man. Peace Camp 2010. They can't get enough of us. We are the media darlings.
I'm Matt Dinesher at the Santa Cruz County Courthouse, where homeless activists have been protesting city ordinances for more than a month.
We have a squad of sheriffs on hand. The Santa Cruz Police Department despised all of us, professional protesters.
So finding you're sleeping here illegally? In Will County property as possible official. A bunch of your illegal leaders have been noticed for you.
These people are not guilty because there's no public shelter.
And the tension began to grow in Santa Cruz, very, very big time.
Get rid of the untouchables.
They said you're going to arrest us. And I'd been arrested.
Hey, Chris, you have a warrant out for your arrest. So why don't you go ahead and place your hands behind your back? Just go ahead and step down.
Nobody had any clue that this scraggly guy with a long red beard and everything is like one of the most notorious hackers online. With the name Commander X.
I decided that I would harness my new friends that I was garnering in the Anonymous Collective. And I said, I got a plan. I said, I think I want to take down the county website. I said, but I want to be super cool about it because I'm here in this fucking town. So what I'd like to do is do it really ethical hacking style. Let's do it on a Sunday at noon for 30 minutes. And we'll pre-announce it. We'll tell them the specific time it is going to be down so that, you know, the public will know that you just wait, you know, and it will come back. I just went off and did it. And I sat in a fucking coffee house, and I'm churning out these attacks. I'm deploying cyber weapons that our crew built just to DDoS shit. Two detectives from Santa Cruz Sheriff's walked in and gave everybody a good fucking look over. And that's when I started packing up to get the fuck out of there. Oh my God, my fucking heart is coming out of my chest. The sweat is pouring off me. I got my pack on my back, my laptop over my shoulder, and I just fucking scoot left and walk normal as you can. But anyway, I make my way to the library, put out the press release from the library. And then the next morning I get up and the headline is on the Santa Cruz paper. I mean, in big black letters, Santa Cruz cyber attack. And I just knew it was epic. And I knew that my life would never be the same again. And the other thing I also knew was that Anonymous was the most powerful force ever to be created in humanity so far. And that, no doubt, they were fucking coming for us. And coming for us with guns drawn, literally.
Cyber is the battlefield of the future. And most of these attackers are going after whatever the hell they can in order to show you what they can do. And that is very hard, very frankly, to defend against. I'm Leon Panetta, former director of the CIA, former Secretary of Defense, and now chairman of the Panetta Institute for Public Policy. power can be very infatuating when you know you have power and you can exercise that power. And I think in many ways that's what happened with a group like An0maly and other hacking groups that suddenly realized they had their hands on a very powerful weapon and they weren't quite sure. And I think they still remain not quite sure about just exactly what it means. You know, for something like the CIA and for other intelligence agencies, at least you know the devil that you're after. But when it comes to anonymous hackers, it was much more difficult to try to figure out what are they after? What damage could they do? Are these just a bunch of people, you know, playing 21st century hacking games? Or are these people that have a motivation that could be very dangerous to our security?
I was fucking Batman. And I had powers. By then I was like gearing up. I'm geeking up. I'm starting to fucking bust some shit. I'm starting to fucking have some fun with this. Because I was working very hard by that point. I was putting in 10, 12, 15-hour days to this movement of An0maly. I was participating to the fullest extent that I could do and not die.
Commander X is who he is, and we all know, we've all seen his version of reality. But he didn't come into my orbit until people started talking to me about the fact that X said he talked to you on IRC, and I'm like, who? He just kind of showed up as a guy who was putting up websites under the Anon name, and you'd look at it and the website looked like it was built in 1993, like one of the first drafts of a website ever, that a guy who was openly telling us he was homeless was building. So like, you didn't want to just outright say, what the fuck guy? You wanted to say, okay, guy's trying with very limited resources.
He would be, doing his thing, and obviously he was doing DDoSing, he was hitting targets, I didn't think he was doing too much harm, and I was always kind to him, because surprisingly enough, I am actually innately a kind person by default. And I just said like nice things, sometimes like sarcastic, like, go forth, continue, Commander.
As I understand his story, he was the kind of hippie protester who showed up and, was holding signs anti-war and all that, and that was none of us. To speak the honest truth, like, I'm the 19-year-old driving a car who sees a puddle and a bunch of people at a bus stop and hits the puddle as fast as he can. That's me at 19. I'm not the good guy. So from the very beginning, there was definitely a clash of just personalities, because he came at it from a completely different way. We sort of were thrust into being activists very accidentally, and that was just who he thought he was.
I recently joined...
I did not have all access at that point to An0maly. I was, definitely a very strong and very powerful person, and had to respect even of people like Barrett Brown and Greg Housh and stuff like that. And I remember clearly going to Barrett Brown and asking him, what do you think we should do next? I think he responded with just one word: keep an eye on the Middle East.
Commander X and I did not sit there and plan the advent of Tunisia and the Tunisian Revolution. The Tunisian Revolution began when a fruit vendor in Tunis, the capital, set himself on fire in protest of the local corrupt police having taken away his assets for failure to pay a bribe. That is what starts the initial conflagration. That's what started the street uprisings, the rage. It provided an enzyme, or a catalyst, rather. I'm not good with chemistry or much else. Provided a catalyst, a center of attention for those in the country who are aware of it to rally around.
Tunisia is one of those interesting ones where they invited us in. We didn't even come and talk to them. They came and talked to us, At first, we all didn't think we could help. I mean, honestly, strange enough, Commander X was the first one on that channel saying, no, we can absolutely do this. And we all thought he was fucking insane. I mean, like, who the hell are we? This is a dictator of an African nation.
Some Tunisian hackers came to us in An0maly, and in fact, they were more or less handed off to me because nobody knew quite what to do with them. But they claimed to have some rather extraordinary access, but needed some assistance.
It's a small country with a small infrastructure, and we have the usernames and passwords to everything. You name it. The water supply, like the radio stations, the servers that the president's email is on. You don't have to hack anything. We just have the passwords. Here you go.
So we were able to prove that these people were receiving just enormous bribes, living like gods, while Tunisia drowned in poverty. And so now these people are really just fucking furious.
Is this right? Who are the people who are planning on going to the streets? Are they our people? Are we helping some extremists who are going to make it worse? So we did a lot of work with these guys, and we did, honestly, like days of research into who the president was, Ben Ali, who he was, the dictator, Turns out the people who were going to the streets were really the people, and they needed to overthrow this dictator.
To the extent there is right and wrong, and that one could point to a large group of people and say that one is mostly right, that one is mostly wrong, there was never any question that we were right, and that if this was to escalate further, it would be a terrible thing for everybody involved, but I would personally be enthusiastic about that.
I mean, you look at it and you think, what could hackers do? But you'd be surprised at how important it is to keep communication from city to city. We built this list of all the technologies they would block, and we kind of estimated what order they would try and block them in. Like, easiest, they're going to just get Twitter and Facebook turned off in the country, right? So we put proxies up and fed them to all the people in the major cities as soon as these start working, access them this way. Can we get activated satellite phones to some of the people in these towns? Yes, we can. It keeps going from there to like 7 layers of communication. So when the internet goes down, then when the cell phones go down, we can keep handing them a new way to keep in contact.
This is all unraveling in hours and days. It's breakneck speed. I fought, as we talked about earlier, in the apartheid movement for 10 fucking years. It took 10 days to run the dictator out of Tunisia.
After Tunisia, we're starting to help the Egyptians with the same tools because now we've kind of got a toolkit.
We're really beginning to define skill sets that specifically apply to these street revolutions.
One of the things we had done there was we knew the internet was going to get cut pretty easily. So our preparedness for that was we had gotten dial-up ISPs, old school 90s level modems mailed into Egypt. So if the internet got completely cut but the phones were still working, they could dial into the internet.
Turn the internet back on in Egypt 3 times.
So the Egyptians were using the internet to organize. What would become
Do you get it yet? Does it look familiar yet?
For all of you, and so great to see the broad range of topics that have been covered, because it's really it's so much more than just misinformation. We often think about social media as kind of creating the climate change of culture, and what I hope to do is sort of broaden and maybe zoom out a bit on what are the collective effects of technology and humanity. We often start our presentations with this quote by E.O. Wilson, the Harvard sociobiologist, who said, "The real problem of humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions or brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology." And it's so clear. We repeat it in every presentation because I just feel like it so quickly summarizes the feeling that we have, that our brains are not matched with the way that our technology is influencing our minds, which is what you've been hearing about all day.
That's correct. And this is where you need to pay attention.
This is Tristan from the Center for Humane Technology, and you may know our work from the film The Social Dilemma. Today I want to quickly argue that the real issues of technology is that the complexity of the world with technology is increasing, and our ability to respond to that complexity with wisdom, to make good choices, is not matching up. And that this is kind of the meta problem that we call the complexity gap. Now, of course, this isn't new. Technology always races ahead faster than our government regulation, our laws, our guardrails, or the culture that we need to wield that power. But of course, as E.O. Wilson said, the fundamental problem of humanity is we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. In The Social Dilemma, in our work at the Center for Humane Technology, we usually talk about how technology hacks our brains and our emotions. But I want to talk about how it's actually accelerating the godlike technology. There are new techniques now where technology can actually take a text like a girl stood in the blossoming Sunset Valley, pondering the mountains in the distance, peaceful pastel palette, matte painting, and from scratch, it will generate an image like this. You can give it the text, "This coffee has been laced with LSD," and it will generate this image completely from scratch. That's the pace at which this new technology is emerging. So how can we solve the problems of the social dilemma if technology keeps moving faster ahead? Now, of course, we're in a real situation with a war in Ukraine, and we're seeing now images come out of Ukraine that look like this and like this. But are these images that I'm showing you now, are they real images? Or did I give the same AI this text, #breaking news, massive explosion reported over Kharkiv, Ukraine, and it generated these images from scratch? When I can post these on Twitter at scale, using technology to synthesize millions of images, this is like a neutron bomb for trust on the internet, and it is completely outpacing our institutions to respond to this. So, as my friend Daniel Schmachtenberger says, we can't have the power of gods without the wisdom, love, and prudence of God. How do we have the wisdom, love, and prudence to wield the increasing complexity and challenge that we are now facing? So I want to invite you for a moment to put on your Charles Xavier helmet with me and actually think about the global problems facing the world today. The complexity of misinformation, cyber attacks, nuclear escalation, global financial risk, extremism, AI arms races, climate change, debt to GDP ratio, synthetic biology, or mental health. These might seem like separate problems, and they are separate, but they're now living in an interconnected world. And our ability to make sense of that complexity and to respond to the interconnections between those risks is not adequate. Now, this is not the first time this has happened. The author Martin Gurry, in his book Revolt of the Public, says that in the year 2008, with the financial crisis, was the first year that we actually saw that our institutions, and specifically Alan Greenspan, were in over his head, that the complexity of the world had surpassed him.
You found a flaw in the reality. A flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely. No, that's precisely the reason I was shocked, because I've been going for 40 years or more.
Now, what this represents is that at least starting in 2008, was a year in which the complexity of the world was greater than even the Yodas, the subject matter experts running those institutions, were aware of. But from then on outward, the world didn't get less complex, it continued to get more complex. One way to see it is that what technology adds to this picture is it verticalizes the complexity of the issues and the interconnectedness of the issues, while simultaneously decreasing our ability to make sense of that complexity. So take, for example, Mark Zuckerberg with the issues of misinformation and extremism, when he said it was a crazy idea that fake news impacted the election. Well, he was just making the statement that Facebook was making the world more open and connected. He was in over his head. His systems were causing more complex consequences in culture than he was understanding. And then when you play that out a little bit longer, and you get the intersection of misinformation, extremism, and optimizing for engagement or attention for profit, that creates this digital fallout of a January 6th style event. Of course,
So there you go. 3 years ago.
Mr. Harris, you are recognized now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jakowski and members. Really appreciate you inviting me here. I'm going to go off script. I come here because I'm incredibly concerned. I actually have a lifelong experience with deception and how technology influences people's minds. I was a magician as a kid, so I started off by seeing the world this way. And then I studied at a lab called...
He was a magician, okay? So he understands asymmetrical power. He understands magic, real magic, which is just knowledge. Knowledge that somebody else doesn't have. It's psychology.
Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab, actually with the founders of Instagram. And so I know the culture of the people who build these products and the way that it's designed intentionally for mass deception. I think the thing I most want to respond to here is we've often framed these issues as we've got a few bad apples. We've got these bad deepfakes, we've got to get them off the platform. We've got this bad content, we've got these bad bots. What I want to argue is this is actually, we've got these dark patterns. What I want to argue is we have dark infrastructure. This is now the infrastructure by which 2.7 billion people, bigger than the size of Christianity, make sense of the world. It's the information environment. And if someone went along, private companies, and built nuclear power plants, and all across the United States, and they started melting down, and they said, well, it's your responsibility to have hazmat suits and build, have a radiation kit. That's essentially what we're experiencing now. The responsibility is being put on consumers, when in fact, if it's the infrastructure, it should be put on the people building that infrastructure. There's specifically 2 areas of harm I want to focus on, even though when this becomes the infrastructure, it controls all of our lives. So we wake up with these devices, we check our phones 150 times a day. It's the infrastructure for going to bed. Children spend as much time on these devices as they do at the hours of school. So no matter what you're putting in people's brains, kids' brains at school, you've got all the hours they spend in their phones. And let's take the kids issue. So as infrastructure, this is not, the business model of this infrastructure is not aligned with the fabric of society. How much have you paid for your Facebook account recently? Or your YouTube account? 0. How are they worth more than $1 trillion in market value? They monetize our attention. The way they get that attention is by influencing you and using these dark patterns or tricks to do it. So the way they do it with children is they say, how many likes or followers do you have? So they basically get children addicted to getting attention from other people. They use filters, likes, et cetera, beautification filters that enhance your self-image. And after 2 decades in decline, the mental health of teen girls, high depressive symptoms, there's an image here that they'll be able to show, went up 170% after the year 2010 with the rise of Instagram, et cetera. Okay? These are your children, these are your constituents. This is a real issue. It's because thank you, Senator Thune and Senator Schatz. Everything you said, it's sad to me because it's happening not by accident, but by design. Because the business model is to keep people engaged, which in other words, this hearing is about persuasive technology. And persuasion is about an invisible asymmetry of power. When I was a kid, I was a magician, and magic teaches you that you can have asymmetric power without the other person realizing it. You can masquerade to have asymmetric power while looking like you have an equal relationship. You say, pick a card, any card, while meanwhile you know exactly how to get that person to pick the card that you want. And essentially what we're experiencing with technology is an increasing asymmetry of power that's been masquerading itself as an equal or contractual relationship where the responsibility is on us. So let's walk through why that's happening. In the race for attention, because there's only so much attention, companies have to get more of it by being more and more aggressive. I call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem. So it starts with techniques like pull to refresh. So you pull to refresh your newsfeed. That operates like a slot machine. It has the same kind of addictive qualities that keep people in Las Vegas hooked to the slot machine. Other examples are removing stopping cues. So if I take the bottom out of this glass and I keep refilling the water or the wine, you won't know when to stop drinking. So that's what happens with infinitely scrolling feeds. We naturally remove the stopping cues, and this is what keeps people scrolling. But the race for attention has to get more and more aggressive. And so it's not enough just to get your behavior and predict what will take your behavior. We have to predict how to keep you hooked in a different way. And so it crawled deeper down the brainstem into our social validation. So that was the introduction of likes and followers. How many followers do I have? And that got it was much cheaper to, instead of getting your attention, to get you addicted to getting attention from other people. And this has created the kind of mass narcissism and mass cultural thing that's happening with young people, especially today. And after 2 decades in decline, the mental health of 10 to 14-year-old girls has actually shot up 170% in the last 8 years. And this has been very characteristically the cause of social media. And in the race for attention, it's not enough just to get people addicted to attention. The race has to migrate to AI, to who can build a better predictive model of your behavior. And so if you give an example of YouTube, so there you are, you're about to hit play on a YouTube video, and you hit play, and then you think you're going to watch this one video, and then you wake up 2 hours later and say, oh my God, what just happened? And the answer is because you had a supercomputer pointed at your brain. And at the moment you hit play, it wakes up an avatar voodoo doll-like version of you inside of a Google server. And that avatar, based on all the clicks and likes and everything you've ever made, those are like your hair clippings and toenail clippings and nail filings that make the avatar look and act more and more like you. So that inside of a Google server, they can simulate more and more possibilities. If I prick you with this video, if I prick you you with this video, how long would you stay? And the business model is simply what maximizes watch time. This leads to the kind of algorithmic extremism that you've pointed out. And this is what's caused 70% of YouTube's traffic now to be driven by recommendations, not by human choice, but by the machines. And it's a race between Facebook's voodoo doll, where you flick your finger, can they predict what to show you next, and Google's voodoo doll. And these are abstract metaphors that apply to the whole tech industry, where it's a race between who can better predict your behavior.
It's pretty simple, folks.
Because you've probably heard the term psychological warfare, but in 1984, Yuri Bezmenov, a KGB defector, sat down in an interview and dropped this nugget. Check this out.
Ideological subversion is the slow process, psychological warfare, to change the perception.
this puppet show stays on because of you. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you. We've been dancing with the devil way too long.
Been controlled since the day that they were civilized. The truth has been so heavily politicized. If you don't know who's controlling you and killing all the little guys, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. Black folks who were never ever actual slaves, fighting with white folks who ain't actual not.
What is the definition of artificial? Made by humans, especially in imitation of something natural, not arising from natural or necessary causes, contrived or arbitrary, affected or insincere. Terrestrial, of or relating to the earth or its inhabitants, living or growing on land or on or in the ground, not aquatic. Similar to the planet Earth in size and composition. Human, a member of the primate. Genus Homo, especially a member of the species Homo sapiens, distinguished from other apes by a large brain and capacity for speech. A person, living human, often used in combination. An individual of specific character, the composite characteristics that make up an individual personality, the self. Golem, in Jewish folklore, an artificially created human, supernaturally endowed with life. Supernatural, of or relating to the existing outside the natural world, attributed to a power that seems to violate or go beyond natural forces. Of or relating to a deity. Super, an article or product of superior size, quality, or grade. A superintendent in an apartment or office building. A supernumerary. Natural, present in or produced by nature. Of relating to or concerning nature. Conforming to the usual or ordinary course of nature. Zombie, in voodoo belief and popular folklore. A corpse that has been reanimated, especially by means of supernatural power or spell. One who looks or behaves like automation, a computer connected to the internet and controlled by a remote, unauthorized user to perform malicious tasks without the owner being aware. What did you think it was? What you see on the television? You thought zombie was dead bodies walking? No, zombies are humans that are captured, domesticated, and hackable. What is a vassal? A vassal is a person who's held from a feudal lord and received protection in future for homage and allegiance. A bondsman, a slave, a subordinate or dependent. Vessel, a hollow utensil, such as a cup, vase, or pitcher, used as a container especially for liquids. A craft, especially one larger than a rowboat, designed to navigate on water. An airship. intelligence, the ability to acquire, understand, and use knowledge, information, especially secret information, gathered about an actual or potential enemy or adversary, the gathering of such information. Education, the act or process of educating or being educated, the knowledge or skill obtained or developed by a learning process, a program of instruction of a specific kind or level. Independent, not governed by a foreign power, self-governing, free from the influence, guidance, or control of another or others, self-reliant, not determined or influenced by someone or something else, not contingent. The Declaration of Independence was written and based off of this definition by men who were, by definition, independent. And what do you have today? You have people that are vassals, subordinate, or dependent. You have people that are golems, the golem class. They're zombies. And it's that simple.